Welcome back, everybody, to the Retro Blood as we continue this 1980s Vampire Month Part 2, talking some bloodsuckers, talking some evil satanic creatures rose from the death of Satan, who's doing his evil bidding. We're talking about the internal damnation ones who just want to find some love and have some heavenly babies. Because we are talking 1980s Vampire Month Part 2. And up next, if you all like Saturday morning cartoons that have to deal with Satan and Satan worshipers and Dracula and him having a human hybrid baby, not called Alucard, who turns out to be one of the members of Fantastic Four. If you like a jacked Satan who overacts everything, and if you like a cartoon that will explain every little detail to you, then brother, this is the cartoon for you, brother. This is a Saturday morning waking up 1980s cartoon for you. Because the Retro Blood is talking all about Dracula, sovereign to the damned. J.H. Alison, James Kline, what's happening, Alison? How is your Saturday morning 1980s cartoon watching going for you? How do you feel eating some bacon, some eggs? You know what I mean? Watching some Satan.
It was incredible, man. And you forgot, if you like movies that have lines like, "Soup, our lives are in danger," then you're going to love this.
Oh, yes. Bro, the overacting in this was like, my God. Like, you talk about theater plays. I mean, like, you know, I'm a child of the Saturday morning cartoons. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Of the animes and stuff. That's why we did last year. Mm-hmm. That's why we did Vampire Hunter D, is because, you know, that was like one of my main movies back in the day. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like it was like one of my like main things, you know, Saturday morning cartoons. You go on there and you know, you watch them, and like this one's very interesting because we'll get into it when we talk to the who booked this shit, but this is like, you know, a lot made by Marvel and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, as a kid, I don't think you realize it, but as an adult, like you're like, why are they explaining every little detail to me?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this, like, we'll talk about it when we talk about who booked this shit, and I'll talk about some of the companies involved in this. But yeah, I mean, it was, so to us, me and you, it looks like a Saturday morning cartoon because a lot of, even though we maybe didn't know it at the time, especially for me, like a lot of like animated shows I watched as a kid were actually anime brought from Japan and redubbed in the United States.
Yes.
I didn't really realize that at the time. Like when I was growing up watching Voltron, I didn't really realize that was a Japanese anime show.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's weird. So it was really weird watching this because it was like watching a Saturday morning cartoon about Satan.
Yes, exactly. It's like, you know, it's one of those like, it's like something like the church would have put out or something like that. You know what I mean?
Almost, yeah.
To show you at like your church Sunday meetings, check out this cartoon about Satan and his follower Dracula and stuff.
But it's almost like the opposite, like because like at the, you know, like when Dracula finds the cross on his hand, he's like, "I've been tricked by the power of heaven," or whatever he says. Yes. It was incredible. Like the dialogue in this was incredible.
Yeah, you know, and like that was a big thing, you know, for all the, you know, people listening out there and, you know, kids and stuff, or, you know, kids of the 90s, kids of the 80s, you know, like the dubbing of these animes were a lot different than they are nowadays. You know what I mean? Like nowadays, they probably take a little bit more seriously. You know, they find like a little bit more quality voice actors. But, you know, back in the day and stuff, like, you know, when we have like cartoons or animes, you know, transferred over here to America, they just find whoever's in the studio, like, "Hey, brother, you want to jump on board this? We got you a payday." Just overact everything. And that's what we're looking for. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's just, it's very fun. Like, I enjoyed this one. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as Vampire Hunter D.
Well, no.
But I thought, you know, it was animated really well. It looked really good.
Yeah.
And the story was apparently obviously it's ripped off of this one comic book, Dracula's like the Tomb of Dracula or something like, which we'll talk about.
Yeah,
but there was aspects that did remind me of Castlevania on there too. So, but everybody, like every retro blood, we will talk to you about multiple things. You know, because me and Alison, we're basically like the Black Mass group. You know what I mean? We're going out there in the state of North Carolina, looking for followers who will listen to our sweet voices talk about pro wrestling and metal music. Oh, yeah. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. And boy, do we have a doozy. Because this movie, was the American release or Japanese release?
No, that's a Japanese release. It wasn't released in the United States until 1983, in which it aired on cable television. Gotcha.
Wait, it aired on cable like Saturday? It did really? Or I was just making up the Saturday morning thing. Did it really air on Saturday morning cartoons?
No, not on Saturday morning. It was on cable TV. It was on like HBO or something, I believe.
I gotcha. All right, so the date we're talking about is August 18th, 1980. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit of what's going on in the pro wrestling. All right, around this time. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can explain this one to me, Alison. And I think we should do more of these. So I think this would actually relate to some stuff that's going on in the pro wrestling that we see nowadays, in 2025. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So there was a match that happened on this date, August 18th of 1980, where we had Jerry the King Lawler, which we actually just saw recently on Monday Night Raw because he was in Memphis. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he was going up against Ken Lucas.
Okay.
Who can, with that name, he could probably be in this movie that we just watched.
Right.
Okay. And they were doing a famed piledriver match.
Ooh. All right. So do you win it by hitting somebody with a piledriver, or do you just do piledrivers on each other until somebody gives up?
I'm guessing you would just whoever lands the first pile driver would win the match.
Okay. That would make sense.
You know, because I mean, this makes sense. Like without me watching the whole build up to this match, I mean, obviously Jerry the King Lawler's main move was the pile driver during this particular, era of pro wrestling.
Yes.
And then probably it's like, well, maybe this Ken Lucas guy who could have been part of that vampire hunter group. Little do we know. He could have been maybe taunting Jerry the King Lawler. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Saying stuff about, who's going to pile drive me first and everything like that. You can't get the pile driver on me. So, but very interesting. Like, I think you could do that nowadays with maybe like a Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Like, you know what I mean? Whoever lands the package pile driver first wins the match because it's so devastating.
That's what they ought to have at WrestleMania. They ought to have a package pile driver match between the two of those guys.
Yeah, there you go.
Or a ladder war is really what they should have, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they should probably do something like that, like a package pile driver match. Yeah. You know what I mean? Whoever can land that devastating pile driver first will get him to the ground. But, pretty interesting. We had another match with Ken Lucas, Ricky and Robert Gibson versus the Assassins and Coach Troy Graham. And it was a hair versus mask match where Robert Gibson pinned Coach Graham to win. So I guess Coach Graham had to take away his mask on that one.
I guess so.
This is all like pretty much near the Memphis territory at the time. So, cool little stuff going on. You know what I mean? Early 1980s, obviously King was very popular, around the Memphis territory. And like his main move was the pile driver. So it kind of makes sense that he would, be in like a pile driver match because, that move at that particular time was the most devastating move in pro wrestling.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Like, so back then, wrestling then is not like it is now. Finishing moves were protected. Yes. So if you hit your finisher on someone, they didn't kick out of it. Unlike today, whereas, you can, hit your finisher on somebody and, they just kick, they just have false finishes and they just keep kicking out of it. That wasn't the case then. The only protective finishing move I can think of today is Kenny Omega's One-Winged Angel. I don't think anybody's ever kicked out of that. But they don't protect finishing moves anymore. But back then, if you hit a pile driver on somebody, that was a big deal, and that was basically, the end of the match. You weren't kicking out of that. And that's why, we talked about it before, I believe, on the show when Jerry Lawler hit Andy Kaufman with the pile driver, and they made such a big deal out of it, was because that was supposed to be like the most devastating move you could do to someone, and it could injure someone or kill someone. And, and if you don't do it right, it really can injure or kill someone, as Stone Cold found out.
Yeah. Well, he did I think he got landed with the reverse tombstone or something like that. But basically, it's a pile driver.
That's
style
also
move.
a pile driver. Yeah.
Yeah. There's different styles of pile drivers on there. And, it's also interesting, too, like, around the 80s and stuff, which is like, we don't really see this too much today. Like you said, the only thing I can think of, too, is the one-wing angel of like a finishing move that we don't kick out of. Mm-hmm. But, like, in the 80s, that was a big thing. We would have the pile driver, Jerry Lee's pile driver would put people in the hospital. Mm-hmm. I can also remember Jake the Snake Roberts when he started doing the DDT. That was one of the most devastating, moves in wrestling as well.
Nobody kicked out of the DDT. Yeah, nobody.
Yeah, and then like obviously, sometimes too, like Ric Flair's figure four was also known to be very devastating at that time as well too.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But yeah, so I mean, that would be cool. That would be cool to see. Like, whoever got the first pile driver wins. Of course, really, I mean, in those days, if like you were saying, if we got a pile driver on somebody, that was the end of the match, pretty much. Yeah, because you weren't kicking out of it.
That was all she wrote right there.
Yeah.
All right. But Alison, what do we got listening to this movie? What do we got going on our way to find the import of Dracula, Sovereign of the Damned?
Which we'd have to watch in Japanese. But yeah, so...
you think they got subtitles on there during that time? Probably not.
No. You're just watching Japanese, man. There's no English subtitles in Japan. Everybody speaks Japanese there. So it was kind of a big weekend. The 16th, which was the Saturday before this aired in Japan, in England, was the Donington Festival, or also known as Monsters of Rock, at the Donington Park. So this is a big, like, hard rock, heavy metal festival that had been going on for years, or has been going on for years. I guess 1980 actually might have been the first one, actually, now that I think about it. But I won't go through every band that played on it, but Riot played on it. I don't know if you remember us talking about them a year or two ago. They're a New York City heavy metal band. So Riot played early in the day. You had an up-and-coming Scorpions. Well, up-and-coming for North America and England, I guess. They had been popular in Germany for years, but you had an up-and-coming Scorpions who had just kind of started evolving into their 1980s form, I guess you would say, because 1970 Scorpions and 1980 Scorpions are completely different. But 1980 Scorpions is what most people know. And they just released their Animal Magnetism album, and they were touring on that. So they were third from the top. And right above Scorpions was Judas Priest, who were on their British Steel tour. This was the second to the last day of the British Steel tour. The British Steel tour is known in a lot of circles as the tour that introduced Iron Maiden to the world, because they were opening for Judas Priest earlier in the tour. They didn't play on this show, but they were playing, because it's a festival, but they were playing earlier in the tour. Judas Priest, this entire set, by the way, is on YouTube in audio form if you want to listen to it. But they opened with Hellbent for Leather and went through all their classics they had at the time. British Steel was kind of like one of their, I wouldn't say it's their breakout album, because that wouldn't be for another couple of years with You Got Another Thing Coming in America, but they were pretty big. They were headlining. They were playing arenas in the United States at this point, so they had broken out and they were a big band. And British Steel was like, they're one of their huge big hit albums, you would say, before they became like legendary. So they were like, they were, I would say at this point, they were sort of like a new arena band. They were playing big places, but they haven't been playing big places very long. But anyway, and then it was headlined by Rainbow, which I find interesting. So Rainbow, I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the band Rainbow at all?
Yeah, I believe we talked a little bit about them before.
I think we've talked about them. So Rainbow is most known for being the band that Richie Blackmore formed after he left Deep Purple. And they're also known as being the band that introduced Ronnie James Dio to the world. So Dio had been in a bunch of bands before that. He was an Elf and a bunch of bands, but he was also in Rainbow, which is what made him famous, I guess you could say. However, by this point, he had already left Rainbow. Like he had left Rainbow the year or two before. And this is the first tour they did with his replacement singer. So, which I find odd. I guess they were still a big band. Mm-hmm. But they had just recorded their Down to Earth singer and Down to Earth album, and it had the singer Graham Bonnet on it, Graham Bonnet replaced Dio. And this was sort of like kind of the beginning of the end of Rainbow. Like they would still go on to play shows, but they were never as big again as they were at this point. But they were still big enough to headline Donington in front of 35,000 people, which is kind of cool. I would say this is kind of like the last hurrah for Rainbow in a lot of ways. Although
the last hurrah, maybe what happened was Satan was pissed off that Rainbow stole their bride, and he took the Rainbow's magic away from them. Possibly. But yeah, they did not appease Satan, and therefore they lost Ronnie James Dio. Yeah, it makes sense to me, brother. Okay, that does make all the sense in the world. And then Dio went on, of course, to write and record Holy Diver and become bigger than Rainbow ever was. But I don't know. I just want to talk about that festival a little bit because it's a huge festival. I believe it's now called the Download Festival, but it's in the same place, so it still happens. Yeah. That still happens. Yeah. So if you go to Download, then you're basically going to Monsters of Rock. They just call it something different. But yeah, it's a huge metal festival in England. We should probably take a Retro Blood field trip to it. Oh yeah, that'd be fun. Because there's a bunch of bands that go to that Download. Yeah, Download is probably the best metal festival in the world, I would say, other than maybe some of those, European, Norwegian festivals. Yes, some of those are probably Swedish festivals are probably pretty good. Hellfest is a great festival. Yeah, we should go to Download one year. There you go. We'll put it on the company card. Yeah, exactly. The Retro Blood company card. Yes. Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll do it like our, Frank and Rachel and what's his name? Hans or shit. Hans. Yeah. Well, what we'll do is we'll create ourselves a vampire hunting group. Then we'll have millions of riches. And one of the riches, we will go to the land of the Download Festival and partake in satanic music. That sounds like a lot of fun, man. I would love to start a vampire hunting group. We should become vampire hunters. Exactly. Remember, all you need is, for Frank, all he needed was his lineage to be part of Dracula's human lineage. And he needs to know, and you need to know if you want to be like Frank, the art form of ninjas. Ninjas, exactly. What kind of fucking ninja was this guy? He's like the worst ninja I've ever seen. I don't even know where that came from, but okay. He just made that shit up. That's not in the comic. That's not in the comic book for sure. Frank is not a ninja in the comic book? I don't believe so. No, I have. I'll talk about the comic when we get there because I'm a big fan of it. But I do not believe he is a ninja in the comic book. Well, speaking of getting into it, let's get right into it. Who booked this shit, brother? Yeah, who booked this shit? Dracula on here. So of course, we all been following this. I always fuck up names, and that's going to happen here. So be great. So we have a couple directors on here. We have how do you say the first guy? Was it Anakari? Let's see. We have Minoru Okazaka and Robert V. Barron. What I have as a director is Minoru Okazaka. So I watched this on YouTube, which I assume you did too, right? Yes. Yeah. So the English YouTube version. Yeah, the YouTube version is the Harmony Gold dub, obviously. But it kind of annoyed me because at the end of it says written and directed by Robert Barron. Like, not really. I mean, I guess he did the American script, I guess. He just did the American script. But yeah, it's kind of annoying because he didn't really direct this because he didn't change the Japanese version at all, as far as I know. But yeah, Minoru Okazaki directed the Japanese version. And I guess Robert Barron directed the Harmony Gold version, quote unquote, directed. And then we have, they noted Bram Stoker as being one of the writers, I guess, because they were taking aspects from Bram Stoker's Dracula in here. Which is weird, but yes. All right, we have Marv Wolfman on here.
Yeah, Marv Wolfman wrote the original comic book.
Yes. And did you want to talk about that comic book? Because this is really based on it.
Yeah, so basically that comic was I'm a huge fan. It's one of the books I collect. There's 70 issues. It was started in the early 70s, I think 1971 or 2. And so without going too deep into this history, in the 50s there was a lawsuit and laws were passed because they were convinced. So there were congressional hearings that convinced Congress that comic books, especially horror and crime comic books, were contributing to the delinquency of the young people of the United States. So they made it to where it was basically impossible to publish horror comic books anymore. And that was, basically known as like the EC Comics lawsuit and that kind of thing. So, because EC Comics was a huge comic book company in the 50s that almost went out of business because they couldn't publish horror comics anymore. But anyway, that set up something called the Comics Code Authority, which was a group. It was like a rating system for comics, but it would just had to pass this authority. But it basically became self-regulated. But one of the things they couldn't do was they couldn't have comics that included vampires. Like specifically, they could not have vampires in comic books. So once the Comics Code got more relaxed by the early 70s, Stan Lee decided that he wanted to have all these horror comics. And, he wanted to have a comic book about Satan, and he wanted to have a comic book about vampires. So they came out with Tomb of Dracula, which was about, I would say it's sort of a sequel to the Dracula novel in a way. He's the same Dracula from the book. And it has characters that are related to other characters in the book. Hans Harker in the movie is named Quincy Harker in the comic book, and he's the son of Jonathan Harker, who's a character from Dracula. Rachel Van Helsing, the girl with the crossbow, she's the daughter of Abraham Van Helsing, who's the guy in the book that killed Dracula. And then Frank Drake is a descendant of Dracula, because his story was that he had changed his name from Dracula to Drake so that he wouldn't have the stigma of the Dracula name. But basically the comic started off as Frank Drake inherits this castle. Dracula's coffin's in the basement. They of course awaken Dracula, and then all hell breaks loose. So then they formed this vampire hunting group, and then they're basically hunting Dracula for 70 issues. This movie condenses almost all 70 issues into an hour and a half.
Interesting.
So it's really weird. Like when I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, they're just flying through this story. The funny thing though, I find about this is that Tomb of Dracula today is most known for being the introduction of Blade.
Yeah, Blade, yes.
Right, Blade the Vampire Hunter.
Which he was missing in this film.
He was not in the movie at all, right? So you would think, why would they not put the most popular character, in this whole series in this movie? But Blade was not a popular character until like the 90s.
Yeah.
So almost nobody knew who Blade the Vampire Hunter was, or Vampire Slayer, I guess you would say, until the Wesley Snipes movies, until he became like this cultural icon. He became like this character like Shaft, like this. He was just like, in like African American culture, he became like this like cultural icon, a lot like Shaft. So he became super popular. But yeah, he's not in this movie at all, which is really weird.
Yeah.
But basically, the entire series was written by Marv Wolfman, and most of it was drawn by Gene Colan, who was like a incredible artist. This whole series is good. If you guys, a lot of those issues are very expensive. Like the first appearance of Blade is in the thousands of dollars. So they're kind of hard to collect, but if you get the Marvel app, you can read every issue. And if you want to read a really good adventure horror vampire series, Tomb of Dracula is really, really good.
Now in the book,
yes,
they explain every little detail that they do, like this movie did.
It's pretty simple. Yeah, I mean it's pretty detailed. mean, they explain to you why, he kind of explains to you why wooden stakes kill vampires, and it's great. I mean, it's really, really good. It's not as maybe not as quite as detailed as why things are happening as they're happening in this movie, but yeah, the movie was strangely detailed, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, like it has like this like over the topness.
Yes.
When it comes to like the dialogue on this movie, that it reminded me of like theater acting in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But when they do dubbing like that, they don't actually watch the movie, right? Aren't they just reading the script and trying to act it out?
Probably. Well, I mean, nowadays they probably would watch the movie and stuff, but like back then, they're probably just reading the script. And, like I said, like, the acting makes sense to me, because it's, it's supposed to be over the top, made for kids. You know what I mean? So during these cartoons, they were kind of like that. They were very like over the top and very like enunciate everything. Feels like they're screaming about everything.
Right. So. And I think that's part of my problem with dubbed anime in general is even to this day, it's a lot of the voice acting is still like a cartoon. Yeah. Where in Japan, where the Japanese version is not really like that.
Like it's a little bit more soft and
yeah. I feel like a lot of like, so like they had to make it sound like a cartoon. So probably these actors who probably weren't, the top A-list actors at the time, I would say, were going in there and like, they were just like, I'm going to read this script and, it's for an animated show. Okay, I'll just do it the way I do cartoon voices.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm talking about Satan and
killing Satan's baby, so he turns into a Fantastic Four member. I can deal with it. Okay. Yeah, so we'll do a couple trivia stuff around here. So pretty fun. So Dracula, Survey of the Dam, was one of the last productions in Japan made from Toei's license with Marvel that saw them make Spider-Man and the first 3 seasons of Super Sentai. You ever seen Super Sentai?
Super Sentai is that not Power Rangers?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, however, Toei went on to produce much of Marvel's production animation for the rest of the decade. So even though this was like the last one that was made in Japan, he did like make a bunch of other ones. So this show is basically, like I said, this is all based on that book series, Tomb of Dracula, without the character Blade. And also, too, apparently that book also had an appearance by Doctor Strange in it, too.
Yeah, and I think Spider-Man was in an issue. So I mean, so back then your Marvel series would all, because all this took place in the Marvel universe. So like the whole overreaching Marvel universe, like Tomb of Dracula took place in that. So there would be, in the same world where the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man are fighting Doctor Doom, these characters are chasing down Dracula at the same time. Yeah.
So apparently this was this whole thing. Why it was made was was part of a deal made in late 1970s between Marvel Comics and Toei Animation to produce animated visions of their comic book characters. While the deal was successful, this and The Monsters of Frankenstein were the only 2 films made for that deal.
Yeah, I've always wanted to see Monster of Frankenstein, but I haven't found it yet. It might be on YouTube. I should look for it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's where all the hidden gems are on there if you guys can't find anything. So basically, like, we were talking about this too. Apparently this, let's see. Did you know, I guess the Tomb of Dracula was not available in Japan?
The comic book?
The comic book, yeah.
Probably not. Because comic books in Japan are completely different. Yeah. So the way people read comic books and have always read comic books here is now you go to your comic book shop, but back then you went to the drugstore and there was a spinner rack and it had a comic book on it. And then like a month or 2 later, you get another one if your drugstore got it. Comic books in Japan are completely different because when you read a comic book in Japan, you read like 10 pages at a time that's serialized in a big like digest, like a big book. And then it would have a bunch of different stories in it. And then you would read 10 pages of One Piece this week and 10 pages of One Piece next week or whatever. So yeah, I guess so. Unless they licensed it to put into a digest like that, a weekly digest, then you wouldn't read it because the whole culture around comic books is completely different in Japan than it is here. So that makes perfect sense, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And apparently they had Frank Drake is a lot different in the comic book.
No kidding.
Along with Dolores. So Frank Drake, I guess he was introduced a lot earlier in the story, and apparently he was first a millionaire playboy who squandered his inheritance and had nothing other than his ancestral castle, and he wanted to make it, I guess, into a traveling destination to make money.
Yeah, he wanted to be basically an Airbnb was what he was going to do. So he was like,
actually, he's ahead of the game, brother. Because don't they do that? Isn't there something like that now in Transylvania where you can go stay at Dracula's castle and shit?
Yeah, that in 1980. That was way ahead of its time. But yeah, like he was.
Frank, he finally got it.
Yeah, he was essentially. He was not like a ninja. He was not a vampire hunter or anything like that. He was just a guy who had squandered his fortune, and he found out that he inherited like Dracula's castle or whatever, or something, a building Dracula owned. And then he wanted to turn it into like a tourist attraction, essentially. So yes, the characters are different for sure. But it's close enough that I enjoyed watching it. You know what I mean? Like as a fan of the comic, it was close enough that I enjoyed watching it. But yeah, it was very different, very condensed.
Yeah, and apparently Dolores, she was named something different in the comic book. She was like Domenia. Dracula's wife. She was Domini in the comic book. Domini,
yeah.
And apparently he didn't like impregnate her. He put a spell to impregnate her.
Yes. Also, one thing you have to keep in mind too is like Harmony Gold. Carl Masick owned Harmony Gold. We can talk about him in a minute if you want, but he's known for changing animes. So he would buy the rights to these animes and release them in the United States. But when he Americanized them, he didn't really care too much about keeping them the same, or doing justice to the Japanese version. So, when he got this and turned it into, Dracula, Sovereign of the Damned, I'm sure that he didn't care about keeping the names the same as they were in the Japanese version. So he could have called her Dolores. I don't know what her Japanese name was. I'd have to look that up. But he's definitely known for changing things. He's a very polarizing character in anime because anime in the United States would not be what it is today had it not been for him. Yeah. But he has also attempted to ruin a lot of things. Like I can't think of, because I'm doing this off the top of my head, I can't think of what they were at this moment, but he was the first person who ever tried to bring Dragon Ball to the United States. And he tried to bring Dragon Ball to the United States when it was new, like in 1986. But I don't think any of the episodes were ever released, but he did dub some of them and he changed all their names to like just ridiculous names. And changed like what the story's about and everything. He's probably most famous for creating Robotech. Which Robotech is definitely one of the things that brought anime to the mainstream in the United States before Akira. And essentially with that, he just needed like 100 episodes of a show, so what he got was like 3 shows that had like 35 episodes that were not related at all. And he put them all together to make one story and then change the story so that these 3 completely unrelated shows would make one cohesive story. Which he did a good job with that. I'm a huge fan of Robotech, but it's kind of a bastardization of what the original was.
Yeah.
And this is actually probably closer to the original version than other things that he's done. But yeah, he's Carl Masick is a very polarizing character in anime, and he's the main guiding light behind all this, you could say.
Yeah. Maybe he was a big fan of the Jack Satan.
Maybe, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love the Jack Satan. That was fucking great at the end.
This guy, brother. Save us some protein, man.
Yeah.
So this video originally appeared on the Japanese television network TV Asahi on August 19th, 1819.
So that's kind of nuts,
1980,
right?
My bad.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, right? So that just aired on regular Japanese television. There's like nudity and Satan in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, the Japanese,
well, they don't really care about nudity and stuff.
Right. Yeah. They that's true.
Well, and I don't think, because like I might could be talking out of my ass here, but like, I don't really
usually you are.
Think, I don't think like, Japan, like it's a different kind of like, culture, religious over there.
I was about to bring that up, but I didn't know how to say that. But yeah, I mean, they're not, I mean, Christianity is not like the number one religion there. So Satan probably doesn't, the concept of Satan probably doesn't mean as much to them. Just like
different,
just like a Shinto demon probably wouldn't mean shit to us, but would mean more to them potentially.
Yeah, because it's not culturally wrong to talk about it or taboo and stuff.
Correct.
For them. But apparently it didn't air into the United States until 1983, and that's when we would see Robert Barron's directed English version of this. All right. He used many of the voice actors who would go on to appear in Robotech.
Wow, no kidding.
So a lot of the same actors, English actors that we heard in this one, would go on to be on Robotech.
Right. Okay.
With explaining everything. Oh, wait till we get to that.
Can't wait.
Golly, the acting.
I wish I'd seen the look on your. I wish we could watch this together so I could have seen the look on your face when we watched.
Okay, like there's been some reviews here that I have to take notes on that are been like pretty hard. I think that Possession movie was like one of the hardest one because it was like fucking like dubbed and everything like that. But brother, this one was up there because they would talk so fast and they would just detail everything that doesn't be detailed, and it just like dialogue. It's like, it's fine when you're watching it. It makes sense because like it's so quick. It's made to be like a kids show. So they're very quick and stuff. Dialogue's very detailed and stuff.
Yeah,
I was fine with it, but like the problem taking notes on it is hard as shit. Okay. So I didn't get everything, but I got a couple good lines out of there. So, a couple other things. Like I said, we did a Toei animation, so we'll go on to animate the Monsters of Frankenstein, Pride of the X-Men, and Marvel Disc Wars: The Avengers. So they would go on to do some stuff on there too. Very big. I guess. It's just interesting around this time. Like Marvel was just trying to get into like different things besides their superheroes. They were actually trying to do like bring back more like the Universal monsters on animation. That style. They're trying to like go into that territory over here. I remember that was a big thing for the time to kind of expand their universe and bring in more like Universal monsters in here. And this is kind of like basically this movie and that that comic book Dracula, Tomb of Dracula, was like a big forefront in trying to get those out there.
Yes. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that in the 1970s, the Universal monster movies kind of became popular again. People, for some reason, got back into them. They were re-showing them in movie theaters and things like that. They kind of became popular again. And Marvel, like you were saying, Marvel took full advantage of that. Tomb of Dracula is probably the most successful of all of those books. But they also did a mummy comic. They did Monster of Frankenstein, which is also a really good book. They did a comic called Werewolf by Night, which was like, a Wolfman book. They had a lot of horror comics in the 70s. But yeah, I would say Tomb of Dracula is the most successful of them. But yeah, they were definitely bringing back the Universal monsters. And this is definitely a tribute, I guess you could say, to the Universal monsters for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like, just like with a lot of like vampire stories or Dracula stories, a lot of it is based on Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's very rare that you'll find like a Dracula telling that doesn't have some influences from Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like, as we see going on even this month and when we did this last year, there is vampire stories that don't have anything to do with Dracula or anything like that. But most of the time, what we've seen throughout history is when we have a story centered on Dracula himself, most of that is based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula book.
So since you brought it up, let's talk about that for a minute, because I was going to ask you your opinion on this. So how isn't almost everything that we know about vampires based on Dracula? Like, so I say that, let me tell you why I'm saying that. So Nosferatu, right? So Nosferatu, the big hit of the year for horror, I guess. Which is a remake of a 1920s movie, which was a adaptation of Dracula. So the word Nosferatu is used in Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's used in the book. And Bram Stoker in the book says that Nosferatu is an antiquated Romanian word for vampire. But no one, as far as I know, and I'm not an academic, but no one, as far as I know, has ever actually been able to trace that word to any Romanian word that has ever existed. There is some connection because like a lot of people say, well, it could be based on this word, or it could be based on that word, but it seems like Bram Stoker created the word Nosferatu, which is now thought of as a term for an ancient Romanian vampire. But I think personally that Bram Stoker probably created that. But almost everything that we know about vampires comes from Dracula. Like the fact that they could be killed by wooden stakes. That's a Bram Stoker creation. I'm pretty sure sunlight is a Bram Stoker creation.
Yeah.
Crosses repelling them. I don't know if that's a Bram Stoker creation because he didn't create vampires. I mean, vampires are a culturally Eastern European cultural demon, I guess you could say, monster, something people are afraid of, but they're more like a zombie than they are like Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of course, in the book, in Bram Stoker's book, Dracula didn't look like Bela Lugosi either. He looked, he looked more like the one in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Really, he was, started off old.
Yes, but he was more of a higher class citizen.
Yes,
because I think the original vampires, when they were, doing the lore, I think most of the vampires were kind of like made to look like lower beings, like more of like the poor demon creatures that you'd find at nighttime.
Right. Exactly.
And it wasn't until later on in like the I don't remember what century it is, but later on in the century they started to go more doing vampires more of like the higher class. Mm-hmm. Where they'd be more conniving, more devious, more suave.
Yeah.
And that's where kind of like that's where like Bram Stoker's Dracula was more like framed for that. Exactly. And then of course they would add on the backstory of Vlad on there as well too. Right.
Which is where where Bram Stoker got the word Dracula from Vlad Tepes.
Because he was Dracula,
which means like the dragon or something like that. I think what it actually means.
Yeah, it's like the dragon. It was kind of like his family's symbol or something like that, or his house.
Yeah, which had nothing to do with vampires. There was, as far as I know, other than him impaling all those people, there's no like lore of like Vlad Dracula like drinking blood or anything like that. Uh-huh. That he just took that name and created the word Dracula and then created this world in this book, which is, and it's an incredible book. If you've never read Dracula, you should. It's not an easy thing to read because it's written like a notebook or like a journal. So it's hard to read. In a lot of ways, it's not very narrative, but it's a really good really good vampire story. But yeah, pretty much everything that we know about vampires today, other than those damn Twilight vampires, which don't count. Other than that, everything that we know about vampires pretty much came from Dracula.
Yes. And of course, movies throughout, have expanded on the lore, a couple of things, before we get into the whole review too, is like about the Dracula talk or vampire talk. Also too, vampires back in the day also were known to turn into werewolves, or like turn into wolves, I should say.
Yeah.
And then obviously they would be killed with silver bullets and stuff like that. And then that has actually gone away from a lot of the lore of vampires over time as well too.
Yeah, because nobody can afford silver anymore. So
yeah, no. Come on, man. Can we get him with bronze at least? Okay, come on now. So, but yeah, it's very interesting to see like the progression of vampires throughout the time. It seems like now because of the big, the big success of the Nosferatu movie that came out Christmas of this last year, it seems like now like more of the vampires are probably going to go more towards like the hidden creature.
That'd be cool.
Compared to more of like the suave kind of a creature that they were too. So we'll see, like how vampire movies kind of progress. But it seems like we're kind of like, going a little bit backwards to like how they were like more like demonized. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Compared to like kind of like hiding their demon, being more like like tricksters and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
which will be interesting.
But speaking of interesting, let's try to tackle this animated version of Dracula, Sovereign of the Damned.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
From the dawn of creation, the history of our universe has been one of violent conflict, a chaotic clash of opposing forces vying to dominate the void. The very elements of nature itself are in constant upheaval, an eternal combat of opposites. Light against darkness, heat against cold, motion against inertia. And on the world of humankind, the awesome struggle of good against evil, the conflict between love and malevolence. In Transylvania stands a sinister castle, a fortress shelter of evil and death. The lord of this castle is the tragic and terrifying personification of the cruel conflict between the affirmation of life and the corruptions of death.
How much longer do you intend to go on with this hopeless wild goose chase? Are you aware an entire year has gone by, and we're no closer to finding Count Dracula than we were the day we started? And you know what? Your unerring and infallible flea bag there is a total, complete washout. How do you feel about that, Elijah?
Mortal! How dare you command the presence of Satan? No!
Stop it!
Sounds like a vampire movie.
Yeah, don't laugh. That guy could be telling the truth.
Come on, you mean you believe in vampires?
You should pay my alimony. That old bat I was married to is a real bloodsucker.
So we start off the film with a narrator. A good old narrator, you know what I mean? Sometimes you need that when you start off some films and stuff.
Well, yeah, you got to
tell
tell me where I am, right? Or I would never know.
Yes. So
this narration is incredible, by the way. Or this introduction narration is incredible.
yes. You know what? I think I would love to have been a voice actor, American voice actor in the 1980s and stuff, because you could just be over the top.
Dude, that'd be so much fun.
You
That would be
scream
so much fun.
over the top. So he states, in Transylvania stands a sinister castle, a fortress sheltered of evil and death. The lord of this castle is the tragic and terrifying, afflicted, and of life and corruptions of death, condemned to exist eternally, unliving but undead, and tormented by mortal passions. He is known as Dracula.
Like, did we need all that information?
No.
Could we have not have just said, in this castle lives the evil vampire Dracula?
No,
and then moved on with our story.
We got to use all of these shit. We got to use cruel conflict between all life and death, corruptions of death. We had to use all that shit. All right.
It was,
but here's
like crazy.
I think this is what cracked me up the most.
Yeah.
So, this is not supposed to be no comedy and stuff, but this shit was funny as fuck.
It was fucking hilarious.
So then he goes on saying, I couldn't believe this. I could not have believed this. Okay, check this out. Driven from his native Europe by relentless pursuit of his organization of an organization of vampire hunters, Count Dracula fled to the United States of America, seeking to hide himself in the city of Boston.
Like they go into this big lawn where they're building up to this big thing, and they're like,
to Boston. I was like, bro, what the? Okay.
It's like we did one take of this.
Bro, we go to, in these horror movies, we go to Chicago.
Yeah.
We go to New York, which New York was in here.
Yeah.
Go to California.
Yep.
Like Dracula's like, you know what? We're going to go to that Boston, brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm a Red Sox fan. I'll just go to Boston.
Yeah, exactly. All right. He was not the only evil presence in the city. For amongst the mortals, there was a group who practiced secret dark deeds. They met in a church, but their forms of worship was an unholy discretion. All right.
So Dracula was here coincidentally at the same time as this group. So they're not related to Dracula at all, right? They just both happen to be in Boston at the same time.
Yeah. So basically there was a Boston group of Satan worshipers called Black Mass.
Right.
Okay. And their goal right now is to give Satan a present of a wife named Dolores.
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'll get back to the narrator guy, but we go.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But we go back to them, right? And they're doing all this Satan ritual stuff, and it's funny because like the guys come in after we see them driving in a car, and then like their main leader who had like this mask on. Well, I thought it was a mute, but he wasn't. He just had some mask on. He's like, "You're late," and they're like, "Oh, brother, we got stuck in traffic." Don't you know that we're trying to give Satan a fucking gift here and you got stuck in traffic?
This is important. You got to leave early enough for our satanic ritual.
Yeah, come on. What the fuck, man? So they started doing the Satan ritual. All the powers are drawn. They draw a pentagram and now everybody's nervous. I'm like, brother, this is what you signed up for. Why are you getting nervous?
Right.
They start chanting and stuff. They all look nervous. And then a big bat appears and it's Dracula. And then the guy's like, oh, yes, this is Lucifer's body. Is in front of us.
Okay, yeah, sure. It's Dracula.
So I guess they didn't know this was Dracula. They said this is the living body of Lucifer has now come to us. Because Lucifer, which they name every gimmick of Satan in this. Lucifer, Satan, Lord of Darkness, bringer of damned souls. They name every name. Like it's kind of like a pro wrestler where we got to say this his full name. And what he does.
His whole gimmick. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. We got to do Seth freaking Rollins.
Right.
Lucifer. We got to do Satan, Lucifer, Lord of Darkness. It's like he's like a pro wrestler. We had to come out here. Okay.
Well, he looked like a pro wrestler, so that made sense.
He did. He looked like, boy, he was jacked. I wonder if he gets plenty of protein down there in hell.
Oh, guarantee he does.
So eventually Dracula comes in. It comes like a bat and everything. He stares into Dolores' eyes for a long time, and he takes her away and he flies away. Okay. And when he does that, we get more of the narrator guy. Which I lost his quotes. Let me see where they're at here. All right. It says, he's like, disciples of Lucifer, hear me. Tonight we invoke the living presence of our master himself. We beseech the Lord of Darkness to raise from hell and accept our sacrifice. We pray the maiden we have chosen to present to him shall be found worthy. Gotcha.
Yep.
So after Dracula takes her away, all right, the narrator was like, the beautiful Dolores had aroused the unholy desires of Dracula, and he intended to claim her for himself. She would be his for all eternity. He would make her immortal like himself. She would be released from the construction bounds of mortal life, and she would be his forever. But Dracula could not do it. His damned soul could not take this woman he could not turn her into a being to live forever. He could not do it, but he still lusts for blood. So he goes out there and he attacks another woman on the street. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So while he's attacking this woman on the street, there's like this this lady is basically walking in Boston downtown alone. All right.
Well, yeah, of course, sure. I mean, you should be safe to go shopping around Boston, right?
No, have you been to Boston downtown?
Well,
I have. 2 weeks ago, that shit was dirty as fuck. Holy shit, bro. Bro, this is actually a very accurate portrayal of Boston, dangerous and shit. But bro, I was down there. Bro, sorry to all of our listeners from Boston, brother, but by God, your downtown city is fucking creepy and dirty. Shit.
Yeah.
So this girl's walking around there. Dracula comes up, eat her. Homeless dude, drunk off his ass. He's like, oh shit, what the hell? And then there's like a news report of like all these guys in the bar saying, oh yeah, that broad shouldn't have walked down the street and shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like fucking victim shaming her for some reason.
Yeah. You shouldn't go outside if you don't want to get attacked.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck? And then like the homeless guy's like, yeah, this creature came in here. He was in a bat. He turned into a man and then he bit her. And then they're like, oh yes. Then the news reporter was like, yes, we can't take anything this homeless guy says seriously. He has 35 years of being a drunk. So we just took him away.
Strange that they know that specifically.
Yes. Maybe he told him, hey, I'm a 35-year drunk, brother. All right.
Maybe.
So this is when we meet Frank. He's in the bar.
Frank Drake
talking about vampires. And he's like, hey, y'all don't blame the vampires. You should have met my ex-wife.
Ha 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 ha. Humor.
So he gets a random call at the bar.
Yeah.
Have you ever got a call at the bar, Alison?
No, but it happens in TV shows all the time. So I'm assuming people used to call the bar when they were looking for other people.
Just imagine that. Like, hey, I got a car at the bar.
I actually could imagine that. Like, you know, like with us, like I could see it being 1980. There's no cell phones.
Yeah.
I need to find James. Where's he at? Oh, he's probably at the bar. Let's just call the bar and see if he's there.
Yeah. Let's call the bar, brother.
I could see that. I could see that happening. That's probably the most realistic thing in this entire movie, actually.
So he calls the bar and this girl says, hey, can you meet me by the flower patch or some shit like that? And he's all like, no. Why the fuck would I want to do that? It's like, come on, I'll pay you and everything. And then she's like, is this Frank Dracula? And he's like, what? What did you say? What?
How did you know my name?
And so he goes out to meets them at like this park. And this is when we meet Rachel. And then this is when we meet Hans. What's his name? Hans.
His name is Hans in this. His name is Plenty in the comic book.
Yes.
But yes.
So Hans is the wheelchair guy.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying like, yeah, I know you're, like I said, everything is explained in this fucking movie. He's like, Frank, I know what your really lineage is. Your lineage is you were the lineage of Dracula before he became the servant of Satan when he was mortal. And that's how your lineage traced all the way back. And you've been trying to hide it by changing your last name to Drake because you want to hide your lineage to Dracula. Mm-hmm. And he goes on saying like, yes, I'm hiding it, but I'm not trying to, basically the Hans is saying I'm forming a team to go after Dracula, and I want you to be on it. And he's like, no, I'm not going to be on it. You guys are crazy. You want to go after Dracula? We'll die really easy.
Yeah.
And then like he says like, go bugger off. And then Hans starts attacking him in the wheelchair with the cane. Mm-hmm. And then we see Frank does ninja.
I know that. I was kind of shocked to see that. I'd never seen this before, by the way, but I'd always wanted to watch it, which is why I tricked you into watching this. But yeah, when Frank came out as a ninja, I was like surprised. I was like, really?
And then and then after that, he's like, yes, you saw my ninja powers. And Hans is like, yes, that was a mere trick to make sure that you are worthy enough. I was like, didn't he just say he didn't want to do anything with you? And now you had to trick him and now he agrees? Okay, this is how anime works. So then they go to Hans's trophy room, which basically has a bunch of pictures of Vlad everywhere. It's kind of like, it's kind of like you would go to like one of those like horror movie nerds houses. Yeah. You know what I mean? They would have signed posters of all their, their people like us. Right. But he's just obsessed with Dracula. Yeah. See, I'm surprised he didn't have a signed poster of Dracula with him and like him hugging Dracula, one of those professional photos. That'd be hilarious. I will say that it is weird that obviously the reason he's chasing Dracula, right, is because of his father,
Jonathan Harker
yes.
had such an issue with Dracula in the 1800s, but it's really odd that he has so many pictures of Dracula in his house. But anyway,
well, it's the collection over time, man. Very valuable stuff. Okay, and then Frank's like, he's like saying like, you want to go, hunt vampires and stuff, but you guys have no idea about how dangerous and bad real vampires are. And Hans is like, hold my beer, motherfucker. Let me tell you this story.
Let me tell you about vampires. Let me tell you this really detailed story about what happened.
So the reason that Hans and Rachel are vampire hunters now is because back in the day, brother, they had her okay, so let me make sure I got all these names right.
Okay. We
have Hans's father, Jonathan Hecker, was a vampire hunter, and we have Rachel's grandfather, Abraham Van Helsing.
Yeah, who were all characters from Dracula.
They were the two characters who almost killed Dracula.
Yes,
because they got the closest to anybody who ever got close to Dracula with them two. Because we see them like sneaking up to Dracula's tomb, opening it up, looking surprised. They're about to stake him. Dracula wakes up and then totally whoops their asses.
I think that's really odd. Like, why they all hesitate. They all, in every one of these movies, they hesitate long enough for Dracula to come to. They're his ass immediately.
Well, Dracula's a big star, brother.
Well, that's true.
You know what I mean? It's like if you saw like your favorite movie star, you're like, oh shit, there he is.
Yeah, and and it's maybe
marking out. Exactly. I mean, he has all his fucking collections.
That's
true.
He has
posters of it and everything in his room. What do you expect?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Start marking out. You know what I mean? So I thought this part was hilarious here. Okay, so now we figured out why Hans and Rachel are vampire hunters now, because their relatives, their deceased father and grandfather tried, and now they're gonna try.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're keeping the genes on. Mm. But I don't know if you heard this, and I don't know if this was like intentional, but when Hans was like explaining, my father was Jonathan Hecker, her grandfather was Abraham Van Helsing, and then you hear like a fart noise. Did you hear that?
I did not notice that.
You did not notice that?
No, I didn't notice that. That's great.
After he said that, then you hear this noise saying, boop. It was like, and it sounded like a fart. I literally rewinded it like 3 times. I was like, did somebody just fart the room?
That's so good.
All right. And then I was like, this is why we became vampire hunters and stuff. And now he's saying like, and then Frank's like, well, why should I become a vampire hunter? So I was like, well, if you do that, you can clear your name, your Dracula last name, and you'll have gratitude to mankind. And of course, Frank laughs it off. I was like, I don't really care about all that. If I try to help out humanity and everything and stuff, all I get is a cup of coffee. And then Hans like, okay, well, we'll pay you $10,000. Or $100,000. No, he's like, $100,000. I don't know. That's more than I made last week. All right, brother. How about you throw her in there, Rachel, and I'll do it. And then Rachel starts attacking his ass. He's like, okay, everybody, I'll just take the money.
I'll just take the money.
And then he asks, this was was this movie supposed to be a comedy? Because this shit was cracking me up in the beginning.
It's just funny. It's not supposed to be a comedy.
And then they ask, okay, how are we going to track him down? And Hans like, check this out, brother. I have a holy dog named Elijah who got kicked out of the church for drinking holy water. I was like, what the
fuck? Okay, let's stop for a second.
Wait a minute, you got a holy dog?
I can go with the holy dog. I got it, right? And there is a dog in a comic book, but I don't think his name's Elijah. He looks completely different.
Does he drink holy water and got kicked out of the church, brother?
I have a lot of questions.
Yes.
Like one,
that scene.
So I'm pretty sure only Catholic churches have holy water. So I'm assuming he was a Catholic dog. So do most Catholic churches have a dog?
Yeah, brother. A holy dog.
A holy dog. And he's a holy dog. So he's been like blessed by the church.
Yes.
But then he got kicked out of the church because he drank the water.
Yeah, he drank the water, bro. It's kind of like the story of Adam and Eve, brother. You know what I mean?
Kind of.
The humankind have ate the apple, but if it drinks the holy water, motherfucker, you're out of here.
But the dog is holy. Right? Like, but why can he not drink holy water?
He's extra holy now, brother. We can't have him being a holy. He's going to be a holy dog, and it's going to be a holy shit, okay? If he starts shitting around there, okay? All right?
But yeah, so basically.
Elijah, go around and besmirch the name of Jesus, brother, okay? Get him out of here. And then, of course, Elijah was like, well, fuck, bro, I just lost my job. What am I going to do? I'm going to hang out with this fucking Mark. I'm going to hang out with this vampire Mark named Hans, and I'm going to trick him into paying me.
And I'm going to become a vampire hunter with this Dracula Mark. But
I cannot believe it, bro. When I heard this shit was just, I had to stop it. I was just laughing my ass. I could not.
Why did we need an explanation? Well, I mean, we're going to be saying this a lot, but why did we need that explained? Why couldn't we just say, "Oh, I have a dog, and he can sense the evil aura of vampires," which is what they use Elijah for?
Because it's way cooler if he's a holy dog. All right.
Who got kicked out of the church for drinking holy water? Like, that had to be an explanation. Yeah. We had to know that information.
And then wait till you see like what he does. It's like fucking hilarious. So now Frank is worrying about, he's gonna say, oh, the real trouble is when we find Dracula. Well, no shit. I mean, these things are gonna happen.
No kidding.
So now the Black Mass, the Satan cult, is upset because Satan is like ignoring their phone calls. Just imagine that, brother. That's like every yeah. So he's like
with their phone calls.
Satan is ignoring my phone calls, brother. Come on. So now he does like a ritual to talk to Satan. Satan shows up jacked as shit.
Yeah, he's like the pro wrestler Satan. He looks like
just red body guy.
He looks like superstar Billy Graham.
Yes. You know what I mean? He's a big, really, he's a Hulk Hogan, brother. Satan, all right. So he asks, why are you angry at us, Satan? He's like, you did not give me a bride. You let that imposter Dracula take her. But don't worry. I have a revenge that is so cruel that you mortals can't even imagine. Boy, wait till we see what his shit is.
This is great.
It's like, don't touch him for 1 year. All right.
Sorry. So now we have this don't
touch his house for 1 year.
For 1 year. So we have this cruelty. We have this passage of time for no reason. Like, why do we need to wait a year? Like, why do we have to jump forward a year in time for this plan?
Well, I mean, we kind of find out why.
Oh, well, okay, that's true.
Even though his plan, Satan's plan was it didn't really work.
Well, no, I mean, that's kind of why he lost the battle against, God, I guess. Originally, his plans just aren't that good. But,
anyway, it doesn't work apparently.
Yeah.
So now the narrator tells us the vampire and stuff. The vampire crew has been hunting Dracula for a whole year. So that holy Elijah dog.
Yeah,
he sucks at his job apparently. He just cannot. He and they explain it's like, well, Elijah, what he does is he finds where Dracula isn't. So if he finds out where he is, we can find out where he is. Well, no wonder he got kicked out of the church. Get on out of here, Elijah. Come on, doggy.
Find out where Dracula isn't.
I'm going to find out where he isn't, because then we can narrate where he is. Oh, well, thanks, Hans. We appreciate that.
It's fantastic.
All right, so now they're saying that on Christmas Eve, Dracula and Dolores gave birth to their son, Janus.
Yes.
All right, the son of Dracula.
Yeah.
All right. And I like Frank over here because it's like, we have made no progress, and I blame that flea bag over there.
You don't say.
All right. And Hans is like, no. Dracula, for some reason, he has covered his tracks a lot better. He used to just kill people out in the open, but now he's being more secretive. But we're thanks to Elijah and stuff, where he found out where Dracula was not. We have narrowed down where Dracula is. He is somewhere in Boston. Thanks, guys.
It kills me. I can't believe this is an actual script.
Wait till this. Wait till we get Dracula explaining what he is to Dolores, which is hilarious. So now Dracula's all happy and stuff because he has a kid and everything. All right. And he's explaining to Dolores, listen, Dolores, I got to break some news to you. I am not actually Satan.
No way.
I'm a vampire, the king of vampires, and I'm a victim of Satan's magic. All right. It's like my plan. Then he goes on to this whole, he just tells his whole backstory. All right. He's all like, I knew, I was going to take you as my bride and stuff. I was going to take you away from Satan to get revenge. But then I looked into your eyes and I felt something I never felt before. I felt love. And then he tells us his whole backstory. Basically, his whole backstory is Vlad the Impaler. You know what I mean? They had clean air, clean water, loyal people.
Yeah.
All right. My enemies would try to take over the land, but I would get them back. And eventually they came so much so I tried to impale them to keep them more in terror.
Right.
But then I became bloodthirsty, and then my enemies eventually got the best of me. And then because I was so bloodthirsty and evil, Satan arose, and he gave me these immortal powers of Dracula for my soul to be damnation and torment throughout this whole century. And I was running Transylvania for so long, and then the vampire hunters got so great that I went to the great state of Boston.
Moved to the great state of Massachusetts.
I found this church called Black Mass, and they were going to give you a bride. And I was like, you know what? I might as well fuck with Satan because he funked with my eternal soul.
Yes.
So I took his bride, and I looked into your eyes, but I felt something I've never felt before. In my dark soul, I felt love. And then she's like, oh, Dracula, I knew you weren't Satan for the whole time I looked at you. I saw the innocence and heart in your soul. And we have gone in this Milan for years and years and years, and you've been great. And we had a son together, and you're the best. I was like, boy.
All right, so hold the fucking phone for a second.
Yeah.
So she goes, well, okay, I guess it does make some sense. She goes for a year with him thinking that he's Satan. But then she finds out he's not Satan, but it's okay that he's a vampire. That's perfectly fine.
Well, okay, so kind of. I think she said, like, right when I looked into your eyes, I knew you weren't Satan. Yeah. But I was cool with it because I could see the goodness in your soul. Which that does remind me of like Castlevania. Yeah. Because, in Castlevania, that Dracula, he met his wife, which I don't remember her name in that one, but they're the one that she was like the mother of Alucard, and that was her whole deal was where she could tell the humanity still within Dracula, and she was the one that helped Dracula get his humanity back. All right, but then of course when the church killed her, that's when all hell broke loose again. So this one's a little different in that story, you know what I mean? So I thought that's what they're going to go for, but they didn't.
So when you say Castlevania, do you mean the video game?
Yeah, the video game and the
or the
show, the Netflix show as well too. The first season of Castlevania was very like that. It loosely took the background of Castlevania 3 in that one, but that's what this story was reminding me at the beginning was, that Dracula, obviously he found a bride. That bride would help him turn more into, humanity, more of a mortal, and then they would have a son together. But I thought the goal in this one was going to be that somebody was going to kill the wife and he'd go crazy, but it was a little different. So, but she goes on basically saying that you've healed my soul. You have because basically what she did was she was kind of like a reject from the world. This Dolores was. She didn't have any purpose. She didn't have any connection with humanity at all. So that's why she agreed to be Satan's lover. But then when she met Dracula and his humanity, she has changed him, and now they have a son, and now they're all cool with each other.
Yeah. Well, she says that she agreed to be Satan's wife on a lark because she didn't think Satan existed.
Yes.
Hilarious.
Okay, so now we see that Satan is now telling his Black Mass crew to send Dracula a note so he can trick him. So that's what they do. They send him a note. They read the note. Basically, the Black Mass Church wants to take the baby Janus. Was it Janus? I think it was Janus.
Janus, yeah.
And they want to baptize him. All right. So Dolores thinks this is a trap because she knows that the church knows by now that this wasn't Lucifer that they gave the bride to. But Dracula's like, you know what? It's all right. I can handle all those Satan worshipers, brother. Don't you know my fucking Dracula strength? No problem with them. So, and it's like, I think this would be good for the kid because it'll give him some extra protection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
So during this, they leave to go to the church, and this is when we see the vampire crew, and they're looking at him, and Rachel just like, I could put an arrow through his heart, and I got him. And then Hans is like, no, why has he got like a kid and a girl with him? What's going on over here? Let's follow him some more. Okay. So they follow Dracula and his family all the way to the Black Mass Church. They go into the church, Dracula's family does, and they get tricked by the Black Mass leader, the guy in the mask and shit, saying, you have stolen Satan's bride, and now we will get our revenge on you. And the whole time, Dracula's like, you're not going to do anything to this, innocent kid. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of weird because, like, when I was watching this, I felt like Dracula didn't think there was going to be any kind of, like, consequences for taking Satan's bride. Like, he thought he was all cool. You know what I mean? So, but the whole time this thing is basically they kind of like seal up the whole castle or the whole church. Right. And they have crosses all around on the doors and stuff. So that's very hurting Dracula because, he can't handle the cross, brother.
Right.
Okay. And the vampire hunter guys are like, looks like Dracula has sealed it up because they still think like, the vampire hunters think that Dracula is like onto them, but Dracula has no idea about them.
Right. He has no idea they're coming.
It's kind of like a fan, like all these like fans of Dracula, which is like the vampire hunter group think they're so important, but the actual Dracula is like, I don't even know who you fucking guys are. So then they go on. The Black Mass leader, all right. You stole Satan's bride and stuff, and you will die now. Dracula says, your bullets won't hurt me. He's like, well, I got silver bullets, asshole.
So they will.
And Dracula's like, oh, shit. Damn it. How did you know about that secret lore that you read in that book? How did you know about that? So he shoots and he misses and he actually kills Dracula's son with the silver bullet. I didn't see that coming. I thought that was a pretty good twist.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Because, like I said, I thought this was going more towards the Castlevania route where they would maybe he would shoot the wife.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then that's when Dracula would go crazy and stuff. And then the son would grow up after a couple of years to try to fight off. I mean, basically, that's the whole, Castlevania storyline with Alucard. Mm-hmm. But no, they went a different way. And then we have, they killed the son and then they turned him into a Fantastic Four member, which we'll see soon. And it's like, how dare you kill an innocent child? And then Dracula starts getting pissed off. He eventually kills the priest. And then he destroys the whole church and everything. So I guess when he's pissed off, his crosses and silver bullets they don't matter. So the vamp crew comes in there. They see Dracula's all pissed off. All right. And that's when Rachel, she takes a shot at him. All right. And then Dracula, oh, bro, I could not believe this. So like Rachel shoots him and stuff. That's what gets Dracula's attention. And then Frank uses his ninja style powers on Dracula. Did you see that shit? That shit was cracking me up.
That was fantastic.
He uses his ninja powers on him. And then Rachel tries to shoot him. Dracula eventually chokes out Rachel. She throws him on Hans, which is a hilarious scene. And then the Dracula's about to kill them both. And then Dolores stops him saying, we don't need all this unnecessary bloodshed and killed. And Dracula eventually flies away. He goes up on top of the roof. He does this big monologue, which is basically his monologue in Castlevania as well, too. He said, they have killed my innocent son. Now humanity will pay.
Yep. So now we have a new plot twist. So now Dracula wants to. Oh, so, I mean, Dracula didn't have an affinity for humanity before. He was kind of preyed on humanity for hundreds of years. But now he's really after humanity because humanity killed his son.
Yes. Like I said, very similar to the Castlevania, just reversed. Instead of killing the son, they killed the wife.
Right.
So now we have now I guess it's been a couple days later or something like that.
I guess so, yeah.
So now we have the narrator saying now we go all the way from the quiet Boston all the way over to the New York City because we have some vampires over there in New York City causing a scene. We see a club with some guys dancing. The guy knocks into the girl. He's like, hey, let me apologize by taking you to my car. Does that line work?
Apparently it did 1980.
Damn it, that shit's easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you just knock into a girl like, you know what, let me apologize you to take you to my car, brother.
I'll take you to my car and apologize.
And she was like all down for it. I was like,
yeah, down, let's do it.
Easy. So he's driving away, you know what I mean? Driving that New York style car.
Yeah.
He didn't get stuck in traffic once. So
No, not at all.
It's been pretty late at night.
Yeah, I guess so.
So then they go by the bridge to make out. And he does the online, hey, do you know I'm a triple scorpion?
What does that mean?
I have no idea what the fuck that means. Maybe he means he's going to poke her in many places, I guess. I have no idea.
Maybe so.
So they read they hear a news report about a lot of dead bodies being by the bridge where they so happen to be at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy laughs saying, yes, I'm that bloodthirsty vampire. It turns out, girl, I started trying to joke with her. Yeah. And then she's like, no, motherfucker, I'm actually that vampire for real. And then she eats his ass. So we find out that this vampire is going to be known as Layla.
Yes.
Okay. So that's why we were in New York to meet Layla. So now we're back. Was she in the book?
She is. I think she has a different name. I think she might be Lilith, maybe. I think she had a different name, but yeah, she is in the comic book.
Gotcha. So now we're back in Boston, brother. Okay. Hans and his crew, they talk about the vampire in New York, and they think it might be Dracula, but like, they're not too sure because they know that there's many vampires out there, not just Dracula. So then they ask about Dolores, and they've been keeping tabs on her because she's just been going to her son's grave every day. And they're basically like, well, we're just going to follow her because wherever she comes, Dracula eventually will show up. And that's how we'll get him. So now Dolores goes to the grave of Janice.
Yeah.
She talks about the good times, and she's about to kill herself until the Lord has come down to shine his light on Dolores. And basically, I don't know if this is God or Jesus, somebody was giving Janice the power to redeem herself from all her going away from humanity and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's going to give her one more chance by giving his Holy Spirit power into Janice and resurrecting him to be a holy warrior of Fantastic Four fame.
Yeah. So this is strangely, of all things that are not explained in this movie, they don't really explain how this happened. But in the comic book, there's a character named the Golden Angel.
Gotcha.
That Dracula had fought, who is an angel. And Dracula had fought him years before. And Domini in the comic book, Dolores in the movie, she resurrects Janice and merges him with the spirit of the Golden Angel. And they become one person. So Janice has like the body, I guess, of the Golden Angel, and he has all the Golden Angel's powers, which are like super strength, and he can control the weather and turn into a golden eagle and things we see in the movie. But yeah, so that's how that happens. So he like merges with the spirit of a Golden Angel, and then he becomes like Dracula's he's like the opposite of Dracula, I guess. He would be he's like Dracula's arch enemy now.
Yeah, because basically he has like the same powers as Dracula, but it's like the holy powers.
Right.
Similar powers. So now Dracula sees the heavenly lights. He knows what's going on. It's like, oh, shit. They're trying to turn my son into a heavy warrior to destroy me.
Yeah.
So he goes there to try to stop it. So we have, I like my notes on here. We have Janice goes into a He-Man looking dude who also looks like he's from Fantastic Four because of the outfit. Dracula tries to stop him. Janice, he turns into the Fantastic Four member. Mm-hmm. All right. And now, Dracula couldn't stop it from happening. And then now we get all this talk about why the son should not kill Dracula. Janice doesn't want the son to kill Dracula because she knows the humanity in Dracula. And he knows that he's a good guy down beneath and stuff. He doesn't mean to do this stuff. It's just that evil Satan power has taken over him.
Right.
Okay. And And of course, the Vance is like, now I've gotten his heavenly powers. My duty is now to kill him because he's a scorch on humanity. So he flies off, and of course, she's all upset. And then Hans and his group show up, and they're like, hey, do you know who we are? She's like, no.
No.
And she's like, let me tell you something about, we haven't, it's like, we have to explain to you who Dracula really is. Okay? She's like, I know who he is. He's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't. And I'm going to tell you.
So he's like, Dracula is, he is killed, he killed my father. He killed her grandfather. Okay? And he's been a plague. Go ahead.
So I love how he explains this. He's like, he killed my wife and my son and this person,
yes, that's right.
That person. He goes through this whole list of people that he killed. And I'm like,
yeah,
he can't just say he killed my family. We have to like have this long
everything has to be detailed. He killed my wife, my father, everything.
One thing though, I will say that I wonder if there's so much detail in this because they were trying to write the script to match the mouth movements. Like the script that they were saying wouldn't have fit like their mouth movements or the length of the time the characters were talking. So maybe they were like wrote a script that would elongate the sentences so that they would fit, the way it looked possibly. I'm just trying to figure out a reason for this.
I mean, it's possible because, like the Japanese dialogue obviously is different than ours.
Right.
So, yeah, I think they were trying to do that too. They're probably just, that does make a lot of sense. You know what I mean? But they're just trying to add in dialogue as they can. And like I said, obviously during this time, even if it was like a serious anime, at this time and almost throughout the 90s too, even if it was a serious anime, they would still dub it like it's a kid show.
Exactly.
So that didn't really change until, to be honest with you, I don't think that really changed until Dragon Ball Z got really popular around the US. And then they started to take animes more seriously.
Yes, I agree with that.
So now this is Dolores. She explains her backstory of how like she had no purpose in life. She was partying all the time. She joined that Black Mouse cult. She was lonely. She wanted to be Satan's bride and stuff. But then Dracula came over, took her. I mean, we literally hear that like 5,000 times.
Right.
Okay. So now Dracula is running, got away a little bit because he's still like a little shocked by that heavenly power.
Mm-hmm.
He now fights his son, Janus. He's like, you won't take me over, son. And you're not my son anymore. You're some heavenly spirit. I survived 500 years. And then they start battling a little bit. And then Dracula's like, you may have some of my powers, but not all of them. So now Dolores wonders if both of them have gone. And then some purple smoke takes her away.
Yep.
And then Dracula feels the presence of that purple smoke that took her away. And he's all like, that Black Mask cult must be behind this. So Dracula arrives at the church. He sees Dolores, but then he gets trapped in Satan's trap. And Satan's like, oh, I love this part. Satan's like, oh, my friend, I haven't seen you in 500 years. And then Dracula literally says this. He's like, Lucifer, Satan, Lord of Darkness, Lucifer, Lord of the Underworld. Like, I mean, he's just saying all his gimmick names all at once. I was like, man, what an introduction. All right. Why have you brought me and this woman here? And then, of course, he brings them down to the hell land.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. And then this is when we start getting really wacky. Like this is Saturday morning cartoon shit right here.
Like it hasn't been wacky before, but like it really gets wacky now.
So they bring him down to hell and everything.
Yeah.
All right. And then, Satan explains like you took I didn't care about Satan's like, I didn't really care about the bride, but you took her and stuff. And you have done the one mortal sin you weren't supposed to do. You fell in love and you had a baby out of love and stuff. And you have disgraced me. And Dracula, by the way, I am not worried about your sinister powers. I am worried about Dolores's powers. By the way, everybody in the audience, she has these mega powers that can stop me and stop my evil plans from coming to fruition. Please, Dolores, do not use your evil, your light powers on me right now that can stop my evil plans because I must destroy you. And then Dolores is like, I'm just a regular chick. No, you're not. You have some special hidden powers that we didn't bring up until right now to make the storyline go some more. Please don't use those powers against me.
These powers we've never talked about before until we needed them for the plot.
please don't use them right now. I'm about to attack you. So please don't use your powers. I'm about to attack you, by the way. Okay. So he attacks her, and guess what? She uses her powers
that she didn't know she had.
And then he gets in the face. He's like, in the face. And then he's all like, you have used those powers on me right now, but don't worry, I'll get back at you. So go back and be fine. I'm getting out of here. So that's our storyline with Satan, brother.
Yep.
Oh my God. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Okay. All right. So now they're back from hell. Okay. And now this story continues because this is like an hour and 30 minutes that did not need to be an hour and 30 minutes, maybe. Okay. So now Dracula has lost his powers.
Right.
And he's freaking out. He's like, oh, fuck, what am I going to do now? I was a vampire for 500 years.
Yeah.
All right. Because you notice he saw his reflection in the mirror. Mm-hmm. So now he just leaves. He's like, oh, I don't have Dolores. I don't have my son. I can't, I can be my humanity self. No, he's like, I'm afraid of dying, brother. I got to get back to being a vampire. This shit,
so
it don't work for me, brother.
Right. So the whole thing about Dracula is he's like afflicted with this vampirism, right? Like it's like a disease and it can't be cured. He can only be killed. But now he is cured and he's like, holy shit, I don't really want to be a normal person. So I want to be a vampire again.
Exactly.
But first I have to get a cheeseburger. That's coming up. Sorry. So his plan. So he walks by the vamp crew, and they're like, "What the hell's going on here?" Yeah, and Elijah.
He didn't do jack shit.
But so they were saying that Elijah couldn't detect him, but we established before that Elijah only detects where he's not.
Yes, exactly. So he's like Elijah couldn't detect him because he doesn't have that satanic vampire powers around him anymore. I'm just thinking like, bro, I think you got like schemed with this dog. Okay.
Yes.
So they're like,
the dog couldn't detect the vampires, period.
So Frank and Rachel are like, yeah, this is really weird. Like he just walked past us and everything was weird. It's like, we got to follow him. So they're gonna follow him all the way to New York City. Mm-hmm. So Dracula goes to New York City, and the narrator goes on saying Dracula's lost his powers, so he has to do the one thing he never thought he would do. He would rob somebody.
And then Dracula mugged somebody.
So he mugged somebody. All right, they're all watching and stuff. And Vaughn shows up. He's like, I can't believe what I'm seeing with my own eyes.
Right.
Dracula doesn't have his Dracula powers.
Right.
How dare we can't kill him. He's a normal human now. We would get arrested. So then Dracula is like, I'm a common man now. And he eats like a hamburger.
They're so conflicted. Like they're like they spend this whole movie. So this movie's taken years. So like they've been chasing Dracula for years in this movie. And like now, and then they can kill it. They can finally kill Dracula because he doesn't have powers. But now they can't kill him because he doesn't have powers because he's not a vampire anymore. And they're going to go to jail or whatever. But it's like, that's all of this like false, like, it's like a false finish in wrestling. It's like, like you think it's over, but no, it's not over because now we have this twist that's going to make it change. So now they can't kill Dracula. Now they're all conflicted. Like, why don't they just kill him? Put him in the Hudson River, and then that's the end. They don't have to worry about this shit anymore.
Well, they can't because now they'll be charged with murder.
Well, that's true. And as the movie from last week shows, that's true.
Now Dracula has to get a social security card. You know what I mean? He has to get an ID.
Right.
He has to register, for health insurance and stuff.
Right.
Now.
But see, if they kill him before he does all that, then it won't make any difference because he doesn't exist. But anyway, so he's hungry.
Well,
so
they tell him to eat a hamburger. They're like, we can't kill somebody eating a hamburger.
No, come on. He has to go to the King restaurant and get a hamburger. And like I never thought that I'd watch a Dracula movie in which Dracula eats a hamburger, but he does in this. So this is.
Well, it's still red meat. There you go.
It's still red meat. Yeah, it's fucking fantastic.
So now we see Layla. She's in the shower.
Yeah.
All right. Get that 18 to 34 male demographic up.
Yeah.
Some dude's like, hey, can I drink some wine before we fuck? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. I don't drink wine. I drink something else.
Right. So that's a line from from the 1931 Dracula, right? He's like, I never drink wine. And she says it the exact same way.
So he goes up there. The guy gets knocked down by Dracula. She's like, who's that? Why are you making noise? He's like, oh, I recognize that name. It's you, Dracula. Hey, you ruined my meal.
This was hilarious. And she's like, he was RH negative too.
Yeah, he was
like,
RH negative.
We needed that information. Like, I'm guessing that's supposed to be a joke, but I don't know. It's just not that funny. Other than how
I thought it was hilarious. He's RH negative, brother. That's my meal. And then he's like, hey, Dracula's like, hey, I know I turned you into a vampire and stuff, so I'm your master. So Satan took away my powers. So now I need you to use your vamp fangs to turn me back into a vampire. Again. Right. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah. And then she like attacks him. He's like, oh, he's like, you lied to me and stuff. You turned me into this tormented soul and stuff, and then you walked away from me and everything. So now she attacks him and stuff, and she throws him out of the way, and Layla won't help. And that's the last time we see Layla.
Right.
So then Dracula goes all the way over to another minion, and he digs up the grave of Melissa. Okay? Digs up her grave. He needs her help. He says, I need the venom from your vamp fangs, which I thought was hilarious, to turn me back into Dracula. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. I have a new leader, Tomo, because you, and then she goes over the whole storyline. We got to hear all over again. So I was like, oh, God.
In case we forgot from
Satan told me all about you falling in love with a mortal woman and having a mortal baby. And now he took away your satanic vampire powers and gave it to Tomo. So here, I'm going to attack you with some zombies.
Ooh. Yes.
And it's like, oh, shit. So now Dracula goes into a house with 3 holy kids. And at first, the holy kids won't open the door because they said no. But then he's like, then Dracula says, I'm getting attacked by vampires. They're like, vampires?
Holy shit.
And they look out. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of bats out there. Let's let them in. So he lets them in. And then they use the power of the cross to destroy the vampires. And apparently, Dracula, he like grabs a cross. But for some reason, this cross was burning into his hand. But even though he's immortal.
Well, right. I was confused by that, but we don't really find that out. Well, no, I mean, we find out it burns into his hand, but we don't know. I don't understand why
it burns into
why that happens, because he's not a vampire now.
Maybe there was maybe in this holy house, they had a burnt, like a cross that they keep on, hot just in case.
Maybe.
And he touched that one. So now Dracula tries to leave, but then Tomo stops him. Saying, I am the new leader of darkness because Satan has given me this leader of darkness power. Dracula says, you're a fake. And he tries to demand all his minions to come back to him. They don't listen. So now him and Tomo fight. And then Tomo gets his ass kicked because Dracula has a burnt cross on his hand.
Yeah.
It worked.
And it does. It stops him.
And then he says, oh, I can't believe I won this match with the help of heavenly gods and stuff.
And he says, heaven tricked me into...
Yes.
Into this or something.
That's having tricked me.
Yeah.
So then we see a shot of Dolores talking with the son, and the son's basically saying like, I have to stop, Dracula and stuff, but don't worry about it. I'll take care of him. As in like, see, he kind of wins like he's not going to kill him. He's just trying to save him, I guess, which pretty much doesn't work.
Right.
So now Dracula goes back to the castle. We have the vampire crew. Still hunting him down. And Rachel, she still wants to do that one shot with the bow and arrow, but Frank's like, no. Remember, Hans gave us a plan that we now have to explain to everybody right here, right now, with a flashback too.
Again. So hold on. So I think this is fucking hilarious. Like, so throughout this entire movie, there are several instances where Rachel could have killed Dracula with her crossbow, but someone in the vampire crew always stops her from doing it. Like, nope, we can't do it for this reason.
And it's always Hans. He's all like, no, you can't do it right now because he has like some like chick with him and a son. And it's like, now she can't do it because he has a master plan that you cannot interfere with his master plan.
Right.
And only he can do the killing in this master plan right now because you guys are just, you guys failed me, even though I recruited you and you've done everything. I'm in a wheelchair, but I have a master plan that I will take care of Dracula.
It's fantastic.
And then I like it where like he's like explaining a little bit to this plan, and his plan's so secretive. He's like explaining his plan to his crew. It was like, I have this master plan. I'm going to trap him over here and everything, but I'm not going to tell you all the details and stuff. And then it's like, don't look at me like that. I know I'm crippled, but I can still do it. And I was like, what the fuck am I watching here?
Yeah, it's very un-PC. Like they mentioned that he's a cripple constantly in this entire movie. But yeah.
So now Dracula goes to his Transylvania castle. And when he walks into the castle, all his powers have come back. That's all you got to do, brother. Just show up to a castle powers are back. All right. Hans shows up. It's like, I've now cornered you, Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Dracula goes to attack him, knocks him out of the wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
But then while doing it, Hans has stabbed him with a pure silver pipe. All right.
So, yes. So that's, so actually, this part of the movie is a very, very good adaptation of the comic book, of how the comic book ended. So basically, Tomo is a character in the comic book, and he looks like a more like a classic zombie, where he's like not rotted, but like they look afflicted, like he has like pox and things on his face. And when he first resurrects, and he resurrects all these vampires that are like these like demonic kind of earthen lower creatures, like we've talked about Nosferatu being, or not Nosferatu, but like pre-Dracula vampires, like when we were talking about that. So that's in the comic book, and then he fights Dracula, and then Quincy, or Hans in the movie, ends up killing him because his wheelchair spokes on the wheels are made of silver, and he takes one off and he stabs Dracula with it. And that's kind of similar to how this happens in the movie. But yeah. Anyway, continue.
And basically, Hans is saying, like, after he stabs him and stuff, he's like, "Oh, that's pure silver and stuff." Dracula's all shocked. It's like, my life is now, and my judgment is now complete.
Yeah.
And he blows up the whole castle.
Yep. And that's how the comic ended too, with the castle blowing up. Hans sacrifices himself to kill Dracula. Although he doesn't die in the movie, but in the comic book, he sacrificed himself to kill Dracula and blow up the castle.
Then we have Janice and Dolores. They're all crying. And apparently Janice's Fantastic Four heavenly powers now transfer. Because basically Dolores is saying she has nothing to live for because Dracula's dead. He's like, "Well, you got me to live for." It's like, well, it's not good enough.
That's not good enough.
The heavenly Fantastic Four body goes away, and now Janice is turned back into a child.
Yes.
All right. And then now we have some dialogue from the narrator.
Fantastic.
On hearing me. Let me see if I can find it on here, because it was pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
And he was basically, he showed up. He's basically here to wrap up everything.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw. So we hear in Transylvania, crumbling ruins are all that remains of Count Dracula's castle, symbolic of the crumble ruins of his mortal life on earth, a once might fortress, fallen to rubble and decay, haunted by tragic memories of a once mighty warrior and leader, fallen to the descents and depravity of mortal sin. In the end, he was a man, invaluable, destined to fight the eventual fate of all men. But while death is the destiny of each mortal being, life itself is eternal, and mortal men live on the memories of future generations. Their great deeds inspire other greatness, and their evil deeds are a severe warning to all. The ultimate truth remains: life and love are everlasting.
That's a lot of information that we probably didn't need.
Well, this guy was great. I'm going to have him do my intros from now on.
That would be great.
Lord Master, podcast of horror 80s and Titty Man Explained. James Kline, ruler of the underworld of horrors podcast. Yes.
Oh my God.
He'll explain the titties to you all the time. But yeah, Dracula, Sovereign of the Damned, everything. Pretty good. I like
So, yeah. So I surprisingly like this. Like, it was way better than I thought it was going to be. But like I said, I've had it. I had a quote unquote bootleg copy for years and years and years in Japanese, but I've never watched it.
Yeah.
And I mostly had that because I love pre-1980 anime. I just love the way it looks. And I also love Tomb of Dracula comic book. So this was something that naturally I would want to see, but I've never gotten around to watching it. So I kind of tricked you into doing it for the show. But I'm glad we did, because it made a good show and it was fun to watch, and the show was fun to do. But like, I thought it was hilarious. Like there
was some hilarious shit in this movie.
Like the scene where he goes into the kid's house to protect himself from the vampires, and they're all wearing crosses. And then there's like Dracula, or they're like, "Would you like some soup?" And he's like, "Soup, our lives are in danger," which is a great line. It was fantastic. And the whole RH negative thing, like she had to bring that up. Like you killed my, my meal or whatever. He's like, and he was RH negative too. Like, oh my God, like the jokes never end.
Yeah, they never end. We had the holy dog.
Not a holy dog who can only find out Dracula isn't.
We had Dracula eating a hamburger. I mean, there's a lot of good shit in here.
Yeah, it's the only movie I've ever seen where Dracula eats a hamburger. It's fantastic.
We had Frank and his fucking Playboy ninja kicks.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? There you go. I wonder if he ever got his money. Wait, actually, how does he get paid now that Hans is dead? He's gonna be pissed off now.
I guess so.
Maybe he got the chick instead.
I guess so. Maybe.
But everybody, thanks for joining us on this wild journey through 1980s Vampire Month Part 2. Been a great month so far. I'm enjoying all of these films so far.
And we're not done yet.
Because we are rounding out the month with a very hard to find, very rare vampire story, which I've heard really good things about. So I'm getting pretty excited about watching this one because we are doing Near Dark.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
So
we have a lot to say about that.
And of course, on next week's episode, we also give you all the schedule for March as well. What we got going on in the month of March. But Alison and all of our podcast listeners, what song are you going to be taking us out on here today?
Man, we talked about Judas Priest. So, I mean, let's just go out listening to Hell Bent for Leather.
Hell Bent for Leather, brother.
Fits the movie. It's a kick-ass song. Dracula was hell bent for leather.
He was hell bent for a lot of things.
He was. But yeah, I did like how the Black Mask group was always wearing these weird like leather biker outfits but they look like superheroes. Like when she talks about her backstory about how she went to meet the Black Mask group, but she didn't really believe in Satan. But yeah, they're all wearing their leather outfits. So let's play Hell Bent for Leather for the people.
Let's do it, everybody.
Yeah.
And join us here next week on the Retro Blood. J.H. Alison, James Kline. We'll see y'all later.
See you guys.